Well, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're still continuing this conversation on devolution and politics. His Excellency Professor Anyang' Nyong'o is joining us from Kisumu. His Excellency James Ongwae is here with us, Governor for Kisii. Apologies from His Excellency Hilary Barchok for Bomet. He says he is traveling and is unable to join, but we hope we will have him soon. Governor Nyong'o, let's start with you here on this conversation on enhanced voter registration. This is phase 2 of it, and IEBC has missed the targets by far. 1 week they expected about 1.4 million. They've only gotten 200,000 people registering as voters. Is that in itself a vote of no confidence in the leadership of this country?
Well, I don't know whether it's a vote of no confidence or not, but I think there are two explanations to this. One, that usually in the first week of voter registration, the turnout historically has been rather slow because, people say, well, I'm going to go do it tomorrow. They will prolong it anyway, so there's kind of slackness. But secondly, I think due to COVID-19 experiences, there's a lot of pain in the country. And you will find that even when we started voter registration, though the COVID has gone down, those tragedies that have been happening have been there. But thirdly, we were shocked, myself, when I saw the figures at the end of the first week at only 2% of those who were supposed to register had registered. And this was really worrying. And that's one of the reasons why on Monday, 2 days ago, I decided to send the whole of my government back home to mobilize voters to register for the next 2 weeks because it's an emergency, really. And the results we're getting so far, they're encouraging, and it continues like this. By the end of the week, we should see where we are, and we should see the corrections we have done in mobilizing people to go and register, and maybe get over the pessimism that they're not going to register, and now be brave enough to know that if you do something, mobilize them, get them out, tell them that it's important they register, they will register.
So, Governor Nyong'o, 2 weeks is a rather long time, many would say. How is the county functioning, and are they now on leave, or how does this work exactly?
They are out of office, working, mobilizing voters. I mean, anything that can be done these 2 weeks is not as important as getting those people to register. It's a sacrifice we have to make. I mean, the essential services are going on, like in the health sector, that nobody goes home because health is a day-to-day issue. Cleaning of the city goes on, security goes on. But the rest of people, I mean, yes, if you're a director of fisheries, the fish is not going to die in the lake in the next 2 weeks. You will still come back as a director of fisheries and find a fish in the lake. So I have a feeling that these are services you can afford to dispense with for 2 weeks to do a very important thing in the life of this nation. Let the people exercise their right to choose a government of their choice.
Governor Ongwae, what have you done? Because you hear Governor Nyong'o says 2 weeks, a solid 2 weeks he's released his people to mobilize voter registration. But do you think the low voter registration numbers are an indication of what the people think of the leadership?
No, I think, Trevor, we've been seeing this problem, and I think it's a youth issue because more older people are not registering now. They registered some time back. So it's a youth issue, and you've seen it over the last 15 years. I think here we are dealing with issues of generational change. You are dealing here with the issues of culture, the new culture, the new youth culture. We need to, if you look at that, and I will give you examples, fewer youth are actually going to church. Few are even getting, even much more, very few of them are getting married and so on. So you have a very serious generational change here where when you look at the youth, we need to talk to them much more. For them, there are more serious things that are affecting them that they want to look at. The second issue, apart from the generational change issue, where the impact of even the economy, how they feel the government has treated them, that could be an issue. But if you look at the low voter turnout, Central Kenya had only about 90 out of when I was looking at the statistics, they had only about 9.5%. And that 9.5% was the lowest, because the highest, I think, is North Rift at about 27% when I was looking at those figures. It is because they also do not have a presidential candidate.
Okay.
That, I suspect, could be the reason. But I would want to say that we have a serious problem with generational change. We have a serious problem with the new culture that is coming up. I don't know whether it's positive or negative. So we need to keep on talking to them because they are the leaders of tomorrow. We must talk to them to exercise their constitutional right. For some of us, like for me, my colleague brother has indicated that he sent people on leave. But for me, what I thought I would do much more is get the leaders, especially the leaders from the Gusii region.
Yeah.
In my own particular area, the day before yesterday, we met nearly all the leaders. In fact, all those who are standing as governors, about 6 of them. We were together in a major meeting where we had very many people, and we were talking. We also went to town, and we were talking to our people, telling them to talk to their kids, telling those young kids who attended the meeting, basically also talk to the local vernaculars, telling our Kisii people that they must register as voters. And I must tell you, in the last registration, Kisii County was the second. This time I looked at the figures. I think we are also second to Kiambu in terms of registering new voters. And we are going to push it, not only talking to the youths, but we also need to talk to the various groupings, whether it's the churches, especially the church is very important.
Yeah.
The political leadership needs to involve the churches to talk to their faithfuls, so that the faithfuls can talk to their kids back home, because some of those kids probably are not going to church. So this is a thing that you want to talk to the leaders, talk to the women leadership. The youth themselves have actually got a leadership, and in my own county, they even have a youth president.
Yeah.
So we have tried also to ensure that we involve them to talk to their brothers and sisters so that they can register as voters.
Okay.
But it's an exercise that all Kenyans must be involved in, because voting is a constitutional right and is extremely necessary to determine the course of this country and probably ensure that the proper leader is elected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Governor Nyong'o, the reason why I'm talking about this being a vote of no confidence is because the youth themselves are complacent, because they say the promises being given by politicians are empty promises. And they're also saying that the decisions have already been made, therefore they don't need to take their voters' cards at all.
You know, if somebody was 16 or 18 when the NARC government came into power, they would hardly say that, because the fulfillment, the performance of the NARC government and the coalition government made a lot of difference in the lives of those who were 18 and 19, because they could see that in their home, kids who were not going to school went to primary school free primary school education, which affected their younger sisters and brothers. So that was a major promise that was realized. They could see that parastatals were revived, performing and so on. They could see that the economy was moving and more of them were getting employment. But over the last couple of years, we have had economic downturn. And this has brought in some kind of creeping anomie among the youth. They have not seen something that affects their lives positively. Now, of course, President Uhuru Kenyatta has invested a lot in infrastructure. But see, infrastructure is a jobless growth, really. I mean, if you compare the amount of money spent on the flying highway from the airport to James Gichuru Road, it's a major investment, billions of Kenyan shillings. But the number of jobs which have been created commensurate to that capital investment, the percentage is very low. So we usually say that investment in infrastructure brings jobless growth immediately. But in the long run, it creates opportunities for economic development, to create more jobs. So we are living at a time when there's been a lot of investment in infrastructure. For example, here in Kisumu, money has been spent in the port, but it is not yet producing as much job equivalent or commensurate to the capital spent there. Now, the youth, of course, don't understand this. They just say, well, we see these things happening, we are not getting jobs. So there's kind of some anomaly that may mean that they don't have kind of a personal affection with the public sector, a personal affection with government. Now, this is what we have to explain to them when we go to the rural area. I said, look, tell me, John, I know that you don't get a job, but what we are trying to do is lay the foundation for more jobs in the future. Now, of course, people don't live in the future. People live today. And that is why sometimes you find the youths are much more prone to accepting these handouts because they think this solves my problem today, I will eat. But you know, the Christian prayer says, give us this day our daily bread, not our today's bread, but our daily bread continuously. Now, that daily bread continuously is what we must take. Azimio is going to give you bread for you, your daily bread. What we are going to do will not only mean to satisfy you today, but in the future with the following programs. Now, unless you tell them that in this campaign we are having, they may not register to vote. So that's why it's very important that we use TV, radio, and so on to tell you are investing in your future and the future of your children and your children's children by getting the vote and making sure you vote a government that is really futuristic and whose policies are convincing. So we have a tough job to do, Trevor. Governor Ongwae and myself. Governor Ongwae has said very clearly that he collect the leaders, they discuss so they can go out there and spread the gospel. Remember, Jesus used to sit down with his disciples and say, Peter and John, Matthew and so on, what are we going to do for the next month or so? Where are we going? So it is planned, and that means that in these next 2 weeks, we must plan our moves to convince the youth that it's important to vote because they are investing in their future.
Yeah, but Governor Ongwae, therein lies the problem, the promises. And you're talking about the stimulus package earlier on that the next president has to consider stimulus. And you mentioned the 6,000 shillings from the Azimio team. There's the 100 billion shillings from the UDA team. They're promising that to SMEs and MSMEs. So which one is more practical? And the youth are saying that where will the money come from anyway? Why didn't they do this all this time they've been around?
I think like, for instance, what the Azimio candidate, the 6,000 shillings, that's not the only stimulus program that he's going to put in place. It's one of the programs. But where the money was going to come from, if you look at the two candidates, one indicates he knows where the money is coming from. The other one has not indicated where the money is coming from. The one who has indicated where the money is coming from, let me paraphrase him. He says, mimi najua mwanya pahali hiyo pesa inapotelea. Mimi nilikuwa kwa serikali. And what he's actually saying is that a lot of money is being lost through corruption. And in the general estimation, even this current government probably admits that we're losing anything between almost 600 billion to 800 billion shillings annually through corruption. So if somebody comes in and seals those loopholes and spends, for instance, the 6,000 shillings, if you translate it, it will be about 144 billion shillings per annum. And that would give you like 12 billion shillings per month that is actually going into the economy. That is much, much less than the 600 billion that is being lost. But that is only one particular area that that particular candidate is talking about. I suspect that he must be having many other ways of also increasing. For instance, if you increase government efficiency, then you actually not only in the broader context of revenue generation, but in the broader context of reducing wastage and consumption, unnecessary consumption areas. Then you are releasing money to the economy, you are releasing money for development. You basically are going to ensure that you jumpstart this economy. So I think what I want to say, it's doable, Trevor. If you have serious commitment, it's doable. You have seen it. I will give you a very good example. The countries, again, in Southeast Asia, for them, corruption was not negotiable. It's an issue that there was a national conversation. They had held a national conversation, and it was not negotiable. So you must elect a candidate that is going to ensure that issues and matters of corruption are non-negotiable.
Okay.
So that we can, so that we can start raising money and so on for development.
Okay. Governor Nyong'o, there's a tweet here from Dennis Oben, who says, Trevor, why should we go and register and vote when these people already know who the president is, the governors, the MPs? Why go and vote for someone who has been voted for already? Let them just hand over power as they've been doing.
I like that. That's very interesting. Well, in every year that we go to election, there are people who speak like that. But I think this is what you call constructive cynicism. It's constructive cynicism because it makes you go all the way to explain why you want to be elected, and that you are not just sitting in your chair knowing that you've been elected. I mean, that would not be a democracy at all. Well, look, what they're saying is the following: political parties exist to field candidates for election. As political party must field the candidate they are confident will win. So every party will say, we are fielding so-and-so, he is the best candidate. We believe in him. Another party comes and does the same. What the voter needs to do is then to decide between these 2 or 3 people, who am I? Who do I want to believe? Which party do I want to believe? This is different from a one-party system. In a one-party system, you know, for example, during the Nyayo system, the last notorious election they held was the Mulolongo election, where it didn't matter what you did. The fellow who had been chosen, his line will be long anyway. You remember what Mike Kibaki said about that Mulolongo thing. Now, unfortunately for those constructive cynics, this election is not a Mulolongo. And this election is not a one party. There are many parties who are fielding candidates and from which the one person be elected. And we saw it in the last election. So that constructive cynicism is constructive in the sense that it helps us explain to the public that cynicism is not true. Of course, then there are certain areas where certain political parties are dominant, and that's why people struggle to get nomination from those political parties. Now, those struggles are real because, yes, parties can be biased and can get somebody who is not necessarily popular and say he must be elected. That's very unfortunate. We shouldn't behave like that. There are certain areas, and this happens in Britain a lot, where the Labour Party know, well, this fellow is obviously the candidate. There's no need conducting another process of nomination because he has done well, he's popular with the people, we have done opinion polls, we know the facts, so let it go. So in that case, yes, that constructive cynic may be right, but then it's being right is at a personal level, not as a popular level, because in terms of popularity, the party that is fielding that candidate has enough evidence that the people in that constituency will elect that person anyway. These are the realities of politics, or democratic political competition that we must accept.
Okay. Governor Ongwae, do you have confidence in the IEBC?
I have a lot of confidence in the IEBC, but they also need to do things that increase that confidence in the people that they are serving. I don't see a problem with them, but you get a feeling as if they are not trying hard enough to increase the confidence in the people that they are supposed to be serving. So what one would expect from them is, if I was a commissioner, would really work very hard to ensure that they do things that are able to inspire confidence that they are going to manage this election.
Okay. Governor Nyong'o?
I think I would go along with my friend James Ongwae, really. At this point in time, I think we have confidence in the IEBC, but the IEBC must play by the rules of the game religiously. Otherwise, it will no longer be an IEBC. It must not let itself be a tool of manipulation by entrenched interests, which will definitely make its life difficult. The registration of persons must be transparent. The register of voters must be open to the public for inspection. When we go to vote, candidates should know who are the voters and make sure that the process of voting is transparent. Those things apply in every election and put to the test the performance and the adherence of the IEBC to the Constitution or to the will of the people.
Okay. Governor Nyong'o, the two of you have been running counties, and that's one of the reasons why I had you here. What do you think needs to be fixed in order for devolution to work properly? And has it really worked? Because I see here OJ Ayega says what devolution has done is to create billionaires out of a few people.
Well, I don't know about that. That could be true in certain circumstances. I would not like to mention where. But you see, they say in my language that one fly can spoil the broth, you know. But I don't think that you can apply that to all counties, really. If somebody observed one particular case of a few, that should be not been generalized to explain what happened in the other counties. In my county, for example, I know in the first 5 years of devolution, we had a lot of problems, but we have managed to overcome those problems, and things have been happening for which the people are very, very happy. I know Governor Ongwae, if you go to Kisii Referral Hospital, I was Minister for Medical Services when we started modeling that's also hospital with some money from Japan. And since then, Governor Ongwae has done wonders in that place, I'm telling you. So I go to Kakamega and I see what my friend Cliff Oparanya has done in Kakamega, and that thing 10 years ago would not be dreamt of. I go to here, my friend Otichilo here in Vihiga, and what Otichilo has done with this knowledge of climate change and all that, and automating services. You can even sit in Maseno and know which woman is pregnant in Bale. I mean, these things are revolutionary. So speaking like that, it's really just taking one particular case of a disappointing case, of course. I wouldn't say it is not there, but that disappointing case should not be used to explain what happens everywhere in the counties.
But Governor Nyong'o, there have also been allegations of corruption, massive allegations. In fact, I was speaking to the EACC CEO and he said, all of you governors are under probe.
I don't think I'm under probe. I don't think Governor Ongwae is under probe. And indeed, if we are under probe, we are open for inspection. Really, I mean, we are not. But I think the ECA has much more difficult job to do. The big corruption in the national government going to billions of shillings. I mean, here in the county, what am I given per year? How much? I think I had 1 billion shillings. So billions of shillings, where would it come from really in the county of Kisumu? I don't see where it would come from, because if it were to be, the whole budget would not be there for me to do the kind of things I'm doing. So these histrionic hyperboles by certain people from the public should not be taken as explanation of what is going on in the counties.
Governor Ongwae, has devolution really worked, and what does it take to strengthen it?
Devolution has worked very well, and if you give me a few minutes, I'll tell you, because I have to give you my own examples and even revert to what my colleague has just talked about. I normally joke with him because I pass through Kisumu, like the other day I just passed through there, because we take our flights from Kisumu to Nairobi. It's much quicker. And I keep on telling him that he has, you should see what that man has done for Kisumu. I tell him, I call it the city of London, and the type of good work the man has done is completely changed that particular area. Devolution has really worked. And for most of us, we have had to do quite a lot. For instance, if you went to Kisii County and you went to our main hostel that he talked about, the Kisii Teaching and Referral Hostel, I mean, you had an hostel here that when I went in, if you start from a bad place, like in a mortuary, was only a 20-body mortuary. Now we have a 100-body mortuary with the latest machines, and you can actually go and sit inside the mortuary and have your meal, because you not know you're in a mortuary in the first place, in a public mortuary, and that you can take to the bank. So you go there. We're putting right now, it's almost 90% complete, a mother-child, 350-bed hospital, almost 6 floors, 4 lifts, which is going to have 4 surgical theaters, both for mothers and for children. You're looking at serious developments that have occurred at the local level. increase, if you look to come to the issue of human resources, when I went to Kisii, there were only 2 specialists in Kisii. One was a specialist in charge of the counties, of the sub-counties and so on, the other smaller hospitals. The other one was in charge of Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital. I allowed about almost 8 I employed because I found only about 16 doctors. Now we have 170-something doctors. I allowed 80 of them to go for master's training.
Yeah.
Now I have the highest concentration of specialists who have come back. I have 45 specialists that can compete with probably, I'm not sure, apart from Kenyatta National Hospital and Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, that there is a county that has the number of specialists that we have in Kisii. Through a conscious training of the officers that were brought in the various areas of medical specialization, whether it is in oncology, whether it is in pediatrics, whether it is in general surgery and so on, or general medicine. We have consciously, if we were still part of national government, I can assure you that we will not be having, I would not be having in our county 45 medical specialists that are sitting out there, whether it is in orthopedics. We didn't have an orthopedic surgeon. Now we have about 3 or 4 of them out there. And you do know that in the counties now we have serious problems with orthopedic surgery because of the number of motorbikes that are around there and the many accidents that are occurring, not only in my own county, but in nearly all the counties. Yeah. So if you look at the road network, I mean, most of the roads were inaccessible. And we're talking about simple things, Maram roads. Most of the counties now, when I went in, there was a lot of noise about inaccessibility. These days, nobody comes talk to me about the roads not being there, not being accessible. Of course, we may not be having tarmac roads, but the roads are accessible. And those things are happening. Whether you are looking at water reticulation, water points through bowls and so on, all those things are happening all over, and they were not there. So I would want to say that quite a lot of things are going on in devolution. A lot of things are happening, and our municipalities, I gave you the example of that municipality, we are doing tarmac roads. In my own particular municipality, major municipality, I've done 2 tarmac roads to ensure there is proper connectivity, that people are able to travel around much more easily. So, Trevor, a lot has happened. I know the negativities that relate to corruption and so on, but I did tell you earlier that it takes 2 to tango, and in this matter of corruption, and I agree with my colleague that you probably have more serious corruption at the national level. We need to have a serious, you would want the president who is coming in, and one of them has indicated about the need for a serious national conversation on corruption. So that you are not actually dealing with corruption, talking about counties, talking about governors. You are talking about even the ones who are giving the money. Because those people who are corrupt don't give themselves money. There are people giving them money from the open society out there. So this national conversation must take place where everybody understands that we must develop this country. But I would want to tell you on devolution, I think that most of us are the first governors that were there. Our terms are coming to an end. I would want to say that in the formative stages, there were problems of institutionalization. But the institutionalization has now taken root. We have governments, county governments that are working. And what needs to happen is like a small child. When you grow up, I mean, you are crawling and eating soil. If your parents left you alone, they would come and find you eating soil. But at a certain stage, then you started to walk, then you started to run. And that's what is happening with the county governments. They started with the walking, the crawling, the walking. Now we are starting to run because the systems and procedures have improved. We have ensured that there is proper institutionalized. If it is, for instance, procurement, the systems for procurement have been improved, they have been strengthened, officers have been trained, and I think that's an ongoing process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Governor Nyong'o, where are the loopholes? Because the two of you seem to me like you're saying that corruption in the counties is wildly exaggerated, because I know you get about 70% of your budget is on recurrent expenditure anyway, but where are the loopholes? Does the IFMI system help, or is it the Auditor General reports that come too late? Where are the loopholes?
Well, the IFMI system is just an instrument for managing funds, really. The flow of funds is coming in of funds. So it's a system, if it's not working, it can be changed or it can be improved upon. I think the loopholes are in human resources development and the culture of a professional public service. I will tell you that for free. Human resources development and a culture of public service is the biggest problem in counties, because you come in, you find people, as Governor Ongwae said very well, most of these people are public servants from the national government, who are then left here to become part of devolved government. The number of people that the governor chooses are only ministers, or what they call executive committee members. I think in reality they're ministers of the local government, and boards and so on. But the bulk of the public service is public service of yore. And they don't have the mentality of a devolved system of government. They have the devolved mentality of local government of yesterday. It's not their mistake, because those are the rules under which they are operating. Now that resources are coming here, which are decisions must be made here, and they're used productively, that takes time for people to imbibe. And then you get some people who come into county government, the people we appoint, who think that, well, county government, like national government, they see the public servants in the national government living big, they too must live big. And they begin finding ways and means of doing that. You must stop that. You must put in mechanisms for doing that. And we are doing it. And I don't want to go into stories on how exactly that has happened, but Governor Ongwae is very right. It's institutional building at the county level, which must be reinforced by our relationship with the national government. Intergovernment Technical Committee between the county government and national government must work effectively. It's a very IERTC. It's a very important committee to make sure that these things work. So it's a work in progress. And then we as governors are expected to make reports every year, what is called the state of the county address. Now, if I have one here for you, I've been giving these state of county addresses every year, recounting and explaining what has happened and the problems therein. And this is very important because it makes you accountable, and it makes you expose your county to the people and to the world as a whole. What are the achievements? What are the problems? What are shortfalls? What are the bottlenecks? So that you can also get feedback from outside. So I agree with Governor Ongwae. It's not rocket science, nor is it a magic wand we can wave and whisk problems away. But if we dwell too much on the negative aspects of devolution and not celebrate the positive aspects of devolution, we shall definitely be grounding ourselves to a standstill, because negativity as a way of keeping you inactive, of getting energy out of you, because you must always think, how do I deal with negativity? Yes, negativity is there, but it's there because of certain reasons. Look at why it is there and deal with the reasons why it is there. But I hear the tendency that when we discuss devolution, people tend to start from the negative side. It's a bad culture, really. Try and ask, what is happening? What problems are you facing? And how can we solve these problems? That's a much constructive way of dealing with issues than this kind of what I call histrionic hyperboles, explanation of what's going on in counties.
Okay. Governor Ongwae, you're a second-term governor, and there's also the transition. Now you're outgoing. Should you have a say in who comes into office, and why is that important?
Trevor, you are running a government, and when you leave, you definitely want whatever that you are doing, you would want that implementation to continue. I will tell you that the issue of determination, the issue of deciding that whoever is taking over after you happens even in mature democracies. I'll give you an example. Barack Obama campaigned for Clinton very, very, very vigorously. In South Africa, you saw Mandela campaigning for Thabo Mbeki very vigorously. If you come just next door here, go to Tanzania, you saw Mwalimu Nyerere giving that position to Mkapa. Mkapa gave to Hassan Mwinyi. You saw Hassan Mwinyi actually giving it to Mkapa. You saw Mkapa giving the same job to Kikwete. You saw what Kikwete did with the late president. If you go to DRC, you saw what the former president did with the current president who is there. So these issues, they can't be localized. You can't say it's developing countries that are doing that, or what they call the banana republics. This is something that happens the world over. If you went to the Soviet Union, you saw what that president did. When his term was coming to an end, he fought for a man called Medved. I think it was Medved or somebody like that. Yeah, so Medved. Yeah, so this happens all over the world. That succession is something that you want to ensure it happens in a manner that ensures continuity of your programs, that ensures stability for the country. And it does appear that it's actually allowed. If it's happening in mature democracies, then you can't argue that it's wrong. In this country, you saw the former president, Moi, actually fought for his successor. At that time, it was the current president. Moi fought for him very hard. So I don't see any problem in a governor also fighting for somebody to succeed him who is going to continue with his policies, but it has to be done in a mature manner where you allow all the candidates to progress their policies with the electorate. And I gave you an example. The day before yesterday, we had a major meeting in Kisii, and I had 6 contestants for the position of governor who are with me and who are telling Kisii people to actually register as voters, 6 of them. And they were talking to each other. Camaraderie was positive. And they accepted the reality that politics is about competition, positive competition, that politics should happen in a manner that does not engender negativity, does not lead to violence. So they were there, they were talking, and I brought them together. I'm the one who invited them for the meeting, and they came. And that's what you would want to see, where, of course, you are giving the population a chance to choose somebody. But you are also saying that for my policies to go forward, I probably would go with this and this person. I don't see anything practically wrong with that. I don't know if Anyang' Nyong'o has a problem with that when his term ends, because I know he's going to come back. But, and I pray for him. I suspect that he would also do the same. Yeah.
Governor Nyong'o. Thank you very much, Jim.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to thank James for praying for me. I think it's appropriate. And of course, I'm confident that the people of Kisumu will bring me back again to complete my agenda for the county. And of course, I do exactly what James is doing. I think it's nothing unusual. It's very common in politics. So I like to applaud James for that.
Yeah.
Yes, Trevor.
But Governor Nyong'o, you've just mentioned that you're hoping the people of Kisumu will bring you back. The question is why? What is your legacy?
Yeah, my legacy speaks for itself, actually. And that's why I was telling you, Trevor, that I would like to give this to you. This is just the 4th State of the County address. You can get the 3 others, and you'll see why the people of Kisumu will bring me back, because I had 10 promises, all of which really are fulfilled. That was my manifesto. So if I faithfully have fulfilled my manifesto, which was my promise to the people, I think I stand on very firm ground, on solid ground. I stand to request the people of Kisumu to give me yet another 5 years during which I will fulfill those promises. If you want me to go through them, it will take time, but I don't think you want me to do that now.
Just tell me one thing that you're most proud of, Governor.
The one thing that I'm most proud of is the regeneration of Kisumu as a city, which has attracted a lot of investment. When we held our recent Kisumu International Investment Summit and Expo last month on December 19th to 22nd, both virtually and actually, a total of 285 investors attended, both virtually and locally. And just yesterday, I was having dinner with one of the investors from Nigeria, by the way, who is investing in the rice belt, really breaking the jinx we have had for a long time of ensuring that farmers have good farm inputs at a price they can afford, and farmers have good farm gate prices for the rice they produce. And there's the value addition at the farm level by having milling plants which mill rice there, so that we can use the byproducts of rice for poultry feeding and animal feeding. And they are going to do exactly that. They are investing about 5 billion shillings in the process. And this is one of the things that I'm proud of, that there are many side projects in Kisumu which are going to change the economy of Kisumu, create jobs and wealth for the people of Kisumu. One last thing that we've done, yesterday we had a long meeting with NHIF here with my friend Peter Kamunya and this team, is the Marwa Health Insurance Scheme, which is the first of its kind in Kenya.
Yeah.
And the new Health Act actually envisages something like Marwa. One of the reasons why we're discussing yesterday with NHIF, because NHIF wants to see how the new act will be operationalized on the ground, given the experience of Marwa.
Yeah.
We're also discussing with NHIF how they can improve their fund management system, not only to make Marwa work, but also envisaging the new act, which has come to be the framework for implementing universal healthcare. So I think we have been creating things here, which I want to continue doing, and the people of Kisumu are extremely proud of what we have been achieving.
Okay. Governor Nyong'o, there's one elephant in the room that both of you must always address anytime this comes up. And Edu Alex has brought it up again. He says, ask Governor Nyong'o when he shall be paying the suppliers who did supply for the county. Many suppliers are really suffering and no one is listening to them. What really is the problem?
No, that's not true, really. If I tell you the amount of money we had spent paying the suppliers, you'll be surprised. When I came in, I found a pending bill of about 2.8 billion shillings. Now, 2.8 billion shillings pending bill is not an easy thing to clear. And the controller of budget insists that when you get the funds passed you by the Treasury, you must first of all give priority to pending bills. Now we have been giving my priority. We are told again, directed, that you must give priority first and foremost the oldest bill before you come to the new one. This is a backlog, and it's not something of our creation, something of a creation of history. We found 2.8 billion shillings. We have been compelled to pay it over time from the resources we get. The Treasury does not necessarily give us money. You pay some money extra for paying pending bills. You just work it out in your budget. So I know some people are complaining, but some of these pending bills are also usually, you must do due diligence to make sure that they're really pending. And the people who really cry most are the people with the most doubtful pending bills in the counties.
Okay. Governor Ongwae, what are you most proud of in Kisii?
I think we've done quite a lot. I started off when I was talking to you, I told you the first area that I'm proud of is health services. If you look at my health services, I have talked to you about the Kisii Teaching and Referral Store and the many things that we are doing. And by the way, we developed a collaboration with Kisii University where we signed a memorandum of understanding that I would give them all the support and they would use the Kisii Teaching and Referral Store as their main store. And they already have the first batch of university. The approval was given by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board, who came and liked what we've done in the store and approved that it can be used as a training ground for Kisii University. The first batch is already there,
yeah,
and they are training. But apart from that, I have been able to have a number of sub-counties created. In a number of sub-counties, about 3 of them, I have now put up structures, 100-bed units in a number of sub-counties, place called Marani, Nyamarambe, and so on, where we have put 100-bed units. We have put mortuaries which were not existing there. They used to go to private areas. We have put diagnostic equipment, serious diagnostic equipment. So that's one particular area. If you come to sports, we probably have the best stadium in the western part of Kenya, and I hope my colleague from the City of London that he has improved is listening. We have. I'm finalizing putting a tartan track. In the next 1 month, there will be a tartan track in that stadium. It's one of the best for the youths. You know that during my tenure, we negotiated with the national government. We now have a state lodge in Kisii, which was a result of very serious negotiations. We have a central bank, a money collection center, central bank money collection center in Kisii. We have, in the areas of agriculture, we have done quite a lot, especially on artificial insemination, where we reduced the amount from 5,000 to much less, to about from 3,000 to about 500 shillings. In very many areas that I can talk about, the road network, the water system. I negotiated with some investors, and we putting up a factory for sugar, a sugar factory. Shortly, we have done, the investor is coming down shortly to put a sugar factory. It will be the first sugar factory in Gusii land. We also negotiated, we did a concept paper, and we got funding from the Arab Bank for International Development and the Saudi government, of course with the support of the national government. And we are putting up a major cancer center in Kisii, which will be I think the second biggest cancer center after Kenyatta University, because I do not know, even KNH doesn't have a serious cancer center like the type that we will put in place. Even Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital don't have a cancer center like the one that we will put in place. That is also in advanced stages, because all the advertisements for the construction of the cancer center have already gone out. So the devolution for me, you come to Kisii municipality and you will be in shock. When we came in, they were less than probably about 150,000 people. Now you are dealing with a municipality that has close to 400,000 people teaming up. You can't even, when you are walking there 24 hours, even at midnight, you still find people walking there at night. So I would want to say that quite a lot has actually happened.
But when it comes to pending bills, Governor, how much do you owe now?
I owe, at the last count, I was owing only about 200 million shillings. 250 million as pending bills, and that's payable. I reduced my pending bills drastically. And it has to be conscious. I mean, give out jobs for the money that you have. Just like in your house, Trevor, you cannot go and start eating meat when you can't afford it. I mean, I know when I was growing up, we were eating a lot of vegetables, which I didn't know at that time. Vegetables and ugali. I didn't know at that time that I was actually eating a very nice meal.
Governor Nyong'o, how much do you owe right now?
I think I owe about 600 million at this point in time. From 2.8 billion to 600 million is quite good. And I think that's something that we're going to clear systematically in a short time.
All right, let me take some quick feedback and then come to you for closing remarks as we wind up on this conversation. Let's see what you're saying online really quick. First up is Mogire Jasper. Mogire Jasper says Governor James Ongwae is praising 100 body mortuary he built. He may increase to 200 and be proud. It's better to offer quality healthcare, clean water, fight malaria, food security. That way we wouldn't need even a 50 body mortuary. Thank you for explaining that in terms of the healthcare as well. Let's see. Okelo Mwalimu says success, failure of a county is directly proportional to the competence of its governor. We must reject inept county chiefs who ride on the back of party chiefs to get elected. Congratulations, James Ongwae and Nyong'o, for doing exemplary job in their counties. All right, let's see what else you're saying. Agumba Steve says the reality is that devolution has really brought down things to the common mwananchi, despite the few bottlenecks, and any presidential aspirant trying to oppose any aspect that would strengthen devolution should be avoided by all means. Edwin says, I honestly don't think Kenyans are divided as Governor Ongwae is suggesting. What we have is a political and administrational officers who have selfish ambitions and are trying all to pull their tribes to their sides. Okay? Dr. Goa Moja says some governors are not ready to be investigated. That's why they want their own candidate to take the mantle of power. Angela Lazaro says devolution success will depend on our choice of president. Okay? Chalu Woodrose says devolution has been very good for the development of various counties, except that some governors have not used well finances towards development. Misappropriation of finances have been noted in some counties. Some governors will have to give way for new leaders. Isaac Mudusi says for devolution in Kenya to work, leaders will have to differentiate between politics and real development towards the people. This is hard for Kenyan politicians, but I hope one day they will mature. Governor Nyong'o, closing remarks from you.
Closing remarks. These remarks are actually very good. I must congratulate the people who have posted them. They're excellent. I think they're good observations. But let me say the following. My closing remarks is that Trevor and my friend James Ongwae, we build for the future. We don't build for today. And building to the future means laying firm foundation that will last the test of time. Quite often, in order to build that firm foundation that will last the test of time, we must make some very difficult choices, which in the short run may not be popular, but in the long run will be very rewarding to society of the future. And therefore, we must look at the future of our children and our children's children, both at the vaults level of government and national level, and make sure that in the final analysis, prosperity will be our shield and defender in our nation, Kenya.
All right. Governor Ongwae.
Thank you very much. I would want to start from a point that we sincerely need to entrench devolution, especially the issue of devolved funds. We need to entrench that in the Constitution, and the increase from 15% to either 35 or whatever percentage, but those must be increased and entrenched in the Constitution. We also, the National Treasury itself needs to know that it's a treasury not for national government, but also for county government, because we have two levels of government. I think we also have a serious problem there, where the National Treasury probably feels that it's a national treasury for national government. Devolution is something good for this country. It is something that needs to be supported. And I agree with my colleague governor that the people of this country need to support it. I especially want to talk to the Fourth Estate. The Fourth Estate don't bring out things that are positive. I know that positive things don't sell. The negativities that we are talking about that come out relating to devolution, whether you are talking about corruption or you are talking about other inefficiencies, I know that when you have a headline about a governor and so on, then you are selling your papers or your TV station and so on. But we need to support devolution. We need to, it's a growing baby. It's a baby that you want to see that it is nurtured to become a very strong baby. And I see that this baby is a good baby. Okay. And the baby is growing. I think in the next 5 to 10 years, you would be talking about issues of governance. Okay. Improving governance, improving efficiency in the management of our affairs and so on. That's what you're going to see. And depending on the type of president that we are going to have, for me, I can see the type of president that we are going to have. You are going to see this country improving, okay. Development at the local level improving, but there must be a conscious effort by those who are at the center.
All right.
to support subnational governments.
All right. Thank you for making time this morning, His Excellency James Ongwae, Governor for Kisii, and His Excellency Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, Governor for Kisumu. And those are apologies from His Excellency Hilary Barchok, Governor for Bomet, and to travel, therefore could not join us this morning. On that note, we're taking a quick break here. When we come back, Willis Bazura Buru is on the decks. He's here having a heart-to-heart moment with a psychologist. It's called Grace Gashanja. Stay tuned for that.